Σίγουρα θυμάστε.
Of course, you remember the first days of the pandemic last March. Every afternoon, 6 o'clock, Greeks would stop all activities and would watch on the TV a gray haired, middle aged man explaining the COVID 19 developments. He wasn't a star, he wasn't handsome, he wasn't good at rhetorics. But however, his speech was honest and human, and sometimes he would become emotional. Professor Tsiodras, an expert in infectious diseases, well, he was discovered by his co-citizens thanks to the pandemic. Le Figaro named him the new beloved person of Greeks. In COVID-19 crisis times, healthcare professionals become protagonists. People are looking for an iconic parent, one who would tell them, who will console them, is looking for advice in terms of anything relevant to the pandemic. So the healthcare professional need to bring a balance between their daily effort to deal effectively with the practical impact of a global pandemic and the scientific responsibility in terms of the data provided. So this is a new condition, and this shall be the topic of our debate. To what extent healthcare professionals are trained and experienced enough to meet those new communication duties. How distrust vis-a-vis the science can be dealt with, which is combined with fake news and the overexpose on the media. So this is an open debate with C.Panagiotidis D.Paraskevis N.Demertzis concerning the role of scientists in shaping public opinion. Journalist Matroni Dikiakou shall be the moderator.
Η εποχή των ηρώων.
The era of heroes is here. The scientists studying health issues, serving people through ages, have been called to put an additional parameter in terms of their presence, informing their co-citizens in relation to the pandemic, a scientific topic. At the moment, it's has started surfacing. With the help of 3 distinguished scientists, will approach exactly this communication topic, the scientific role and the non-expert role, not correlating fields, and now they're expected to give an answer. There are fake news, fake articles, distrust everywhere, and there's lots of psychological stress. At the beginning, those scientists were praised by the people from a quite large part of the public. They are there, prepared to give answers 20 hours a day. Give answers to any kind of questions, and gradually things changed. Let me give the floor to scientists to explain how one may speak as a scientist via a non-scientific discourse, however, remaining convincing. Our interlocutor has served as head in different associations, European and global ones. He's been studying antivirus drugs via the synthesis of proteins, and he's got numerous publications. Mr. Panagiotidis, good afternoon and thank you. Well, I've decided to change the structure of my speech after meeting two plumpers at our university. The one had got just vaccinated, as myself. The other one was a bit skeptical. One of those who do not believe that the virus exists and that we need to get vaccinated. So I confirmed after our discussion that there are issues that we are not aware of. However, there's first as well for getting informed. Even those disagreeing with us, they do know that there are numerous fake news, and they do wish true, honest information from those that are expert, the scientists. The point is, who can provide this reliable info? For us, it is clear that the healthcare professionals are those that are scientifically equipped to provide this info. As mentioned earlier, there's a large question tag. Are we prepared, we healthcare professionals, to communicate the outcomes of our research together with other topics that might be relevant and important to the public? Because of course we can present outcomes and data to our colleagues. We speak the same jargon, the same language. However, we've been accused of remaining too closed inside our labs, and we do not know how to communicate with people. And this is a risk because when we attempt to do it under the current pandemic conditions, well, it's a bit hard for us to deliver it. So it is important when we answer a question to do it in a well-balanced way, in an accurate and way with precision, telling the truth while not terrorizing people. And again, I see that there are two groups inside the scientific community. You might have read that in a large hospital in Athens, only 50% of the staff has been vaccinated. This generates an enormous issue of reliability. It's our picture to the public. If they do not get vaccinated, why should I get? Would claim someone. Last week, a pharmacist called me. An allergologist had told him to avoid getting vaccinated because he used to have allergies in the past, which is outside all contraindications relevant to the vaccine. So it is critical to have reliable infos from reliable experts, of course, having some kind of communication skills. We cannot avoid, of course, dealing with the negative climate which is exploited somehow from those in favor of conspiracies, which in turn creates problems relevant to the vaccination, or even trying to convince the public to take some unavoidable measures. In this framework, there are many organized efforts for well substantiated information by institutional agencies. Mr. Tsiodras has been a brilliant example. Mr. Paraskevis has played successfully this role, and he's still on, he's still active. So bear in mind that the people involved sacrifice their personal time. And again, there are two scientific associations activated, trying to put order to this counter information network. Unfortunately, this sustainable information is blocked, or rather obstructed somehow, for different reasons. Because the scientists are not expert, have no communication skills. They are not experienced in dealing with linguistic issues and aspects that are relevant to a convincing message. I often tell my students that when they explain something to a patient, they need to do it in the way they would explain it to their grandmother. And again, scientists are sometimes under pressure to explain things that are outside their scope of their scientific scope. We've got journalists pushing them to give an answer which is outside their scope, and well, ironically enough, they dare give an answer which creates further problems relevant to their reliability without there being the fault. And again, there's an overexposure of those scientists, as you correctly mentioned earlier. And people might claim that he speaks a lot. So we need to be more moderate and well balanced in terms of delivering statements. We've been blamed, scientists have been blamed that they deliver contradicting statements, or that they are one against the other. To conclude, an additional factor that I've been considering until recently, namely the increasing involvement of politicians in scientific decisions, and I'm not blaming what is happening in Greece, and I won't refer to the Greek situation, but let me remind you the problems between Fauci and Trump when the first was trying to communicate the pandemic issues. And he managed to be convincing, and he should be a role model for us. In what way? That is, under pressure, one under political pressure may insist and stand up. So regarding communication, scientists needed to get a balance between four levels. adopt a scientific discourse, being consistent, being clear, and the last one, as in the case of Mr. Tsiodras, be honest. We need to be honest. We need not be afraid to tell the truth. Thank you for giving me the floor. Thank you, Mr. Panagiotidis. And now the floor to our next speaker, Mr. Dimitris Paraskevis, familiar in a wide public because he's been invited several occasions and he is an expert with the Ministry of Health, member of the committee. Mr. Paraskevis is a professor of infectious diseases in the National Capodistrian University, an epidemiologist, molecular epidemiology of diseases, and applications in health, in public health care, member of different associations, and member of teams that have published articles that have got publications on scientific reviews, on more than 250 scientific reviews. So, Mr. Paraskevis, of course, you've been exposed on the TV, you've got some kind of experience, and you've been well accepted. So, how would you comment all the above? I would like to thank Mr. Panagiotidis for the kind invitation. Indeed, lack of experience in terms of management, communication management, was the most delicate point. So beginning from that point, let me remind you a term relevant to the healthcare. Healthcare is not just a science, it's some kind of art. To safeguard people, to produce prevention, you need to find a way to convince the people. So to achieve this goal, we needed to utilize different means, focusing always on a very delicate point, training of the people regarding their personal hygiene. The communication of messages become even more critical in the middle of a pandemic. Those principles where we need to base our communication is as follows: trust, simplicity. We need to avoid contradicting messages. Mid-March, there has been a problem with the masks. Reliability, meaning scientific justification at any point in time. Statements need to be reiterated and well substantiated. Empathy, those delivering a message need to understand the particularities of different groups. We need to avoid being uncertain. We need to be clear. When there's uncertainty, we need to avoid complex recommendations. Something mentioned by both previous speakers. Well, we live in the era of fake news. So this needs to be taken seriously into account, and it is one of the parameters that may affect negatively our messages. Now let us come to our experience, the one that I have lived under my capacity. The group where I belong is responsible for communicating messages to the public. So, first of all, we had to, and we did work as follows: adopt single, joint, common decisions and support them evenly in a way that a single message is communicated. We might have been in need of special experts so as to deliver it in an optimal way. And this is why I would recommend the involvement of experts in a team, those that they would communicate the findings of a research, of a survey, in an efficient way. We need to avoid criticizing one another. This could emit quite confusing messages. We need to be reliable, honest, without keeping some topics, issues concealed. We need to avoid presenting our personal views. The final decision might be slightly different compared to our personal one. However, we need to keep it for ourselves. This might create further unreliability and, of course, empathy. This is a very delicate and extremely important point. How easy is it to observe all those rules and principles? Well, there is a continuous need for information which creates overexposure and pressure. This makes our work even harder. And there are a large number of experts present on the media. Journalists are looking for breaking news. People are tired, experts are tired. They are overexposed, so they are easy to slip into mistakes. A unified, a unique, single information is something easy. But we are speaking about a large number of experts. There might be members of a committee, there might not. There are others that may criticize for various reasons. So this creates a negative climate. And last but not least, we need to take into account some other particularities, some other parameters that do play a role. Let me adopt what Mrs. Dichiaco mentioned earlier concerning Mr. Tziodra's attitude, because indeed we need to adopt an attitude that is appealing. Between the first and the second wave, given the excellent first management, the lockdown, the necessity of the lockdown was disputed, and in sometime later, due to different convergences, including wrong communication and fake news, everything was disputed. In the second wave, There has been a large number of deaths, and as a result, which was the result of a normal loosening of the measures. However, this led to further distrust. We cannot blame just the scientific community for the climate, but in any case, all the above were further enhanced in the third wave. Globally, we witness fatigue. The impact of the pandemic is considerable, both the psychological and financial impacts. They generate further, larger, greater dispute vis-a-vis the communication itself, and dispute which renders the role of communication even harder. In conclusion, communication is a main pillar in managing a pandemic. It is part of the science of the art, which is connected with the healthcare science. However, trust, irrespective to the talent of an expert to communicate, is connected with other parameters relevant to the stages of the pandemic, the attitude of the public itself, because non-observance of principles may jeopardize the public's trust or the trust between the scientists themselves. Fake news, the complex impacts of measures are there to further to create a further burden. So thank you. I've just received the first question, says the lady. Now the floor to an expert on communication, Mr. Nicholas D.Mertzis, head of Social Research Center and professor of political sociology in the Kapodistrian University of Athens. He's an expert in political sociology and has edited 27 books and is author of numerous articles. Mr. D.Mertzis, please switch on your mic. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Dikiakou. Mr. Panagiotidis and Mr. D.Mertzis have put forward important topics. Allow me some additional remarks, and then I believe that we'll have an excellent discussion with the public at a later stage. Let me share with you a first slide. Let me find it. So this is the slide. So I would say that the pandemic came as a global event, and an event which confirmed, an incident which confirmed what our modern society describes, confirming, in other words, that a society is in risk systematically on the basis of decisions or omissions of people, has been facing menaces that can be fulfilled or not, and may occur or may not occur. And this is why people are live in a climate of uncertainty. This is an enormous debate this could be an enormous debate, let me convey you the following. As of the 17th century, that was the topic of discussions, meaning the risks. Laplace, the mathematician Laplace, systematically was discussing the risk assessment models and the vaccination and non-vaccination, the risk of dying because of getting vaccinated or not due to smallpox. Smallpox was the issue at that time back. So this is the human race history. It is a history full of pandemics. COVID-19 pandemic came at the post-truth era, an era of fake news, of malicious release of adverse news with the aim to harm people instead of informing them on the basis of substantiated data. Quite the opposite. So this is not modern situation. There has been propagandas for ages. The democratic character of our society is undermined. This is another issue which is enhanced by the role of social media, the role of technology, which echo one or another aspect. Thousands of people communicate with other people via the social media. They remain networked and they share the same views. So they are exposed in a wider discussion without being exposed to adverse or opposite ideas in a way that the discussion would move forward. We've got the filter bubbles, the algorithms. On the other hand, they work for us, before us. You can click that you accept cookies. Automatically you concede part of your privacy to an algorithm without being aware of. As a result, in the middle of this generalized dispute, generalized cynicism, post-truth becomes a weapon in the hands of different political parties or of countries themselves. They generate systematically uncertainty, which has two facets. On the one hand, it nurtures a self-perception of people that are objects, and on the other hand, it breaks the trust of people vis-a-vis their representatives, or even vis-a-vis and against the scientists. There again, we need to stress another contradiction. To dispute science, you need science as well. Ecologists to consider the permitted limits of exposure per cubic meter to X radiation, well, they need scientific weapons as well. The case of coronavirus, at least in the first wave, well, there was an increase of trust, an increasing trust in favor of the health care staff, the politicians, the media, the experts, institutions that would be disputed before the pandemic, which can be explained very easily because when there's an event, deaths, and average people are very interested in, well, they wish to learn more, so they are fully dependent on the media, on the people having this communication role, and they need a leader. So that was the case in the first wave. However, during the second one, due to wrong movements on the part of the government, on the part of the committee, and I'm referring to the public appearance and the communication of messages, this rate started dropping. And I would say that, well, to deal with the distrust of people, to deal with fake news, I can post you some of those that have become famous, creating a specific environment with regard to COVID. Well, you need different time levels. You need a short-term activation of journalist practices in the way the messages are communicated, the way individual relevant to the overexposure of the people of the committee, while systematically the risk communication and crisis communication rules need to be observed. Rules, I repeat, techniques, practices to manage the crisis at the communication level. I remember a distinguished scientist, member of the committee, midsummer, he had an article in a newspaper telling the following: the number of doctors, epidemiologists involved in the committee might be very large. It could be rather better to have more specialties and experts involved in the committee, social anthropologists, sociologists, psychologists involved, which is not the case. And if we forecast that the pandemic shall not be over soon, it would be wise to welcome such an involvement for the sake of a democratic, constructive communication. This is the short-term level. However, as Mr. Panagiotidis and Mr. Paraskevis would tell you that there shall be more in the future. Well, let me put forward there shall be more developments. The story won't be over, so our societies need to be prepared with regard to everything I've mentioned earlier, specific teams and groups to manage those healthcare crises. However, at midterm and long term, we have to head towards building a set of people, experts in the communication of science. This is something wider. It is a terra incognita here in Greece. We need to become more literate in relation to the mass media communication messages and enhance and empower monitoring structures, fact checking, in other words, fact checking in relation to the accuracy and precision of the messages conveyed to the public. Those are structures that are highly needed. There have been actions sometime in the past. It would be good to have them on. It's a vicious circle. Well, I really do not know how we'll avoid getting entangled in it. In any case, there are specific emitting points emitting fake and false news relevant to the pandemic, COVID. So, the point is why they are so well accepted for all of those news. So this is my second question. Modern people why is it attracted by this post-truth, the fake news? It is a matter of education, of culture. Who would like to take the floor and give an answer? Mr. Demertzis, I don't know, that might be a question for you, but he might be tired. So, Mr. Panagiotis would like to take first the floor. This explosion of fake news and of people well prepared to absorb all those fake messages. There are scientists, even scientists, supporting arguments that are characterized by another group of scientists as pseudoscience, and the public is in the middle. Why all those pseudoscientific topics become so popular? I do not know, indeed. Mr. Demertzis might be the correct person to give an answer. However, pseudoscience in all sectors, there are pseudo persons, pseudo topics, pseudo scientists who actually do not serve their science. A science obeys to specific rules. Otherwise, you can't head towards the truth. The people well, on the other hand, the people are looking for the truth. There are web pages in favor of the anti-vaccine movement, and they got all pseudo-scientific, they are all pseudo-scientifically labeled. Well, I simply believe that sometimes those against the science might be performing better than the scientists themselves. And I'm speaking about the information and the disinformation, maybe because they are more familiar with the social media and how they can manipulate them. Well, and again, this is the path they use to communicate those pseudoscientific arguments. Social media, the social media, are informal carriers and of those news. May I let me share with you a slide again on the screen, and let me put forward the following. This, the psychology of rumors. Wherever distrust grows, rumors flow and flourish. This is a rule. What does this mean? Well, the average person to resist, myself included, to resist against an unknown phenomenon, a disturbing phenomenon, well, feels, first of all, that he needs to understand it, to resist by using familiar cognitive schemes. This is an anthropological trend of people. We cannot do without, make do without. We need a minimum feeling of control of our environment. This is the first one, and this is how, against complex, extremely complex situation, we look for simple answers, or vice versa. Our society is very intransparent, so simple questions would comfort us, would resolve the problem of complexity. It's having a simple answer, it's very soothing and healing. Those are psychological mechanisms supporting this trend, very strong mechanism, creating strong, omnipotent social forces. People are vulnerable. They tend to believe in things that might easily appear improbable, unbelievable. So those extraterrestrial infos correspond, meet, and give an answer to their subconscious needs and fears. Need for being accepted, fear of the omnipotency of adverse forces. From the years of the Enlightenment until today, there has been a fight between rationalism and unrationalism. The fantasies and illusions power is such, the need of people to believe in something in order to soothe their pain is such that it would be a utopia on the part of the scientists to believe that just an announcement, a statement, a scientific statement telling the truth would be convincing. We are speaking about a continuous battle and fight and struggle in favor of truth and against those illusions and fantasies. Mr. Paraskevis, a question from the public, but on the part of a scientist. As a scientist, we are trained to speak on the basis of data, not on the basis of feeling. However, surveys demonstrate that it is not the way to convince people. How do you believe that we may conciliate those two facets? An excellent question, because they are both the pillars we needed to observe and keep when we try to communicate messages to the people. Reliability, trust, and honesty, plus the scientific data pronounced in a popular way, in a simple way, need to be both combined when delivering messages, while uh, exposing, expressing rather, feelings in a way that demonstrates that we share the beliefs and the feelings of particular vulnerable group. All the above uh, communicate a message full of respect vis-a-vis the community, meaning a reliable message while respecting the particularities of people. Well, there's another question. Which could be the solution in combating untruth, and how we can train people to be in line with the truth, the scientific truth. Unfortunately, we don't have time to discuss it, and it brings us back to the issue of the 50% of the nursing and healthcare staff of a hospital which refuse to get vaccinated. Well, this is an enormous topic. You are correct. It would take days and hours to discuss it. So let me thank you for sharing your knowledge, your experience with us. Let us hope that we'll stay stronger and wiser. And of course, I use this floor to urge my colleagues to remain well balanced by keeping in mind the needs of both sides in respect. Thank you.